We actually landed on hard money lending because of your real estate team. You remember those stories?
Yes, as a real estate agent working with investors, it was always a struggle because I knew hard money lenders. We'd do email introductions and then they wouldn't reply and they wouldn't talk to these clients, which is crazy to think about. We're handing them a client on a silver platter. Welcome to another episode of the Freedom Blueprint. I'm Adrienne Green, and today I have with me a very special guest, my husband, Harley Green. Harley, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Adrian.
Now, for those who may not be familiar with your investing work, can you share a quick snapshot of your real estate journey? What does your business look like today, and how did you land on private money lending as your focus?
Yeah, so for many years, we did traditional real estate investing, buying rent ready, buy and holds. We did some fix and flips. We did the BRRRR strategy. We even got into short term rentals. And we actually landed on hard money lending because of your real estate team. You remember those stories?
Yes, as a real estate agent working with investors, it was always a struggle because I knew hard money lenders. We'd do email introductions and then they wouldn't reply and they wouldn't talk to these clients, which is crazy to think about. We're handing them a client on a silver platter, but that was the kind of service that unfortunately a lot of hard money lenders provide from the beginning to the end of the process.
Yeah, so we knew there was a better way, and we had opportunity with our retirement funds that we could step in and become the lender on these deals.
Right. And so we really just kind of started as like a side gig to solve another problem. But then it turned out to be pretty lucrative and a pretty good seat on the bus for us with all of our travels, right?
Yeah, so it's great because we can underwrite deals, we can do communication and wire funds from anywhere in the world.
Right. It is a good fit for us. And that's one of the things I love about real estate and investing in general is that there's so many ways to do real estate investing. You can always find the right seat on the bus or the right type of investing for you, your skill set, what you want to do with life, right? So let's talk about financial leverage, right? Let's talk about that piece that we kind of provide to others by being their lender. So, let's talk about the challenge where most real estate entrepreneurs start. They try to scale using only their own cash, their own credit, but that kind of leads to limits on growth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people maybe had some bad experience with debt, or they've heard the talking heads talk about how you don't want to have any debt, and they're kind of afraid of it. And the reality is, using debt strategically, especially when it's secured with a hard asset like real estate, can be a really smart move to help you grow your real estate investing a lot faster.
Right. Because then I always say we want that leverage. We want to be able to use somebody else's time, wisdom, or money for our own growth and development. And that's what you're doing when you are borrowing someone else's funds.
Yeah. And so, we have a lot of very wealthy real estate investors have a lot of their own cash, but they still use us for doing flips because they understand the value of leverage. They're able to do more deals and actually net more money for their family by using our funds for the real estate deal and keeping their funds invested elsewhere with things that they're experts at.
Exactly. Now, to view this from something I see a lot, I hear a lot of investors who feel stuck because they can't afford to scale. They started using their own funds and they bought a few properties, but now money has stayed in those deals and they feel like they don't have the funds to buy another property. What are they missing about using other people's money wisely?
Yeah. So the great thing about private money lending, what we do is there's multiple ways you can structure deals and build relationships with people. And so there are opportunities, especially for experienced investors that have a track record showing like, hey, we did use our own money starting out. They can come to a lender like us and demonstrate that and say, hey, are there ways we can structure this deal so that they have less money in the deal? And so one of the unique things that we've offered is for borrowers that have done multiple deals successfully with us, we're able to cover 100% of their costs so they can keep their cash on hand for paying their contractors, buying supplies, and doing that faster and scaling so they can do multiple deals at one time.
So if you are using a lender, this whole can't afford to scale thing kind of goes away because you're using a lot less of your own money. And what you are doing should be giving you profit. So you have more money to do more investing, right?
Absolutely. With real estate investing, like any kind of investing, there always may be that one flip where maybe it's not a perfect deal. You don't get all your money back out if you're doing the BRRRR strategy, or maybe you have to bring a little bit of
Right.
money to the table, but you still own the home, you got rental, you got cash flow. So that's the beauty of it is there's so many great exit strategies. And when you're using the right leverage and the right financial partner, it can still be a win.
All right. So now we've talked about the benefit of using financing. Investors, I hear it so often the financing is the hardest part of the deal, right? Getting the financing, getting through all the underwriting, everything like that. What are the options there? How can we have a financing process that doesn't feel like we're jumping through all these hoops?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we really focused on streamlining when we got into lending because we had used lenders ourselves as active flippers. And it can be painful. With the wrong lender, it can have onerous and burdensome documentation requirements, clunky online applications, and then constantly coming back to you wanting more and more and more. And so what we've done with Investaway is really streamline things. We use online tools that have a simple application with document uploads all integrated, and we don't require appraisals unless it's a really large deal, and in which case, typically larger deals, the timelines for those are expected to be longer. Whereas a lot of short deals, especially in real estate investing, that's where you get some of the best deals is if you can close quickly. And a lot of lenders are just, they're not set up to do that. They have all these like checks in place because it's not their direct funds. They're not the ones making the decisions. There's other people behind them pulling the levers. And with Investaway, we are the ones who make those decisions. We know the markets that we're in and can underwrite quickly. And so it gives our borrowers a unique advantage in the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think that's something for us to dive into there because the average borrower doesn't understand that. So you may be speaking to Joe Cowboy at, some Texas lending company to make something up, right? Joe Cowboy's like, before you have a property, like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can help you. Yeah, we can help you. And then you get the property, you get under contract. And now suddenly Joe Cowboy is like, oh, well, this is too rural, or we can't really help with the short term rental space because there's all these extra hoops to jump through. Or, we really need yes, we told you we could, lend you 100%, but, on this deal, we can't. We can only lend 80% and things like that. And all of these come up because Joe Cowboy is not the one who makes the end decision, right? For Texas lending. Joe Cowboy is often just a sales rep. And really, it's not Joe Cowboy's money. It's not Joe Cowboy's boss's money. It's really some back end investor, some private equity firm, some big organization like that. And that's the one with the money. And so they're the ones that are setting the requirements on the deals. And they want to get maximum return for minimum risk. And so they have a lot of like little nuances and things like this in place to really optimize that maximum return for minimum risk. Is that a good example?
That's
Or
exactly right. Plus, they add on a ton of fees because you have all these people in the middle that got to get paid to do the work to process your loan. And so you've got the underwriting, you got documentation, you got all these junk fees that they often require. Some of them even require you buy insurance through that lender. It just kind of piles on so much. And they don't advertise these fees up front. So it's like you finally are waiting, you're getting to the end, you're like 2 days before closing, and you finally see the loan terms, and you're like, where did all these extra thousands and thousands of dollars of fees come from? And when you're doing kind of those entry level fix and flips that are maybe 100K, that's a big percentage of your
right.
budget that's getting eaten away.
Yes, that's a very good point. And there's been so much that they've tried to do with truth in lending and things like that. And yet it is still very much an issue. And you bring up those smaller deals. We do see that a lot there versus, the system we have with Investaway. If we were to contrast that, we're talking about we control the funds. We're doing a lot of that underwriting and decision making. We value keeping it simple because we're investors. And we use our virtual assistants from our virtual staffing company, Workogenics, to help man all of this. We are able to do that volume, do that work on the back end, do that underwriting at a fraction of the cost when you compare us to that Texas lending example of a whole bunch of people in that pipeline, all of them US based and needing, higher salaries.
Absolutely. And the speed is really important too. We're able to, once we get that application, do the quick initial underwriting and get the loan terms with all the fees that you're going to see from us out to that borrower like within 24 hours. And they're seeing that they can accept it or reject it depending on if the deal makes sense right then. They don't have to wait weeks and weeks to figure out what all the fees are and whether the deal is going to pencil out.
Right. So to be clear, somebody submits an application and within one business day, they're getting a conditional yes or no and what the terms and fees would look like.
Exactly. It's going to lay out exactly what the interest rate, the term, all the things they selected, whether they're wanting to roll closing costs into loan, which is also another unique thing we do. Many other lenders do not do that. And they can also choose to even defer this interest payment. So again, we're all about leverage and making sure our borrowers can scale quickly. So you can keep those interest payments that you would typically have to pay to another lender monthly and like just one other thing you have to manage. You don't have to worry about it with Investaway loans. You can just focus on getting your projects done.
Now, we got really into the weeds here, really into the concrete things, which is helpful for people who may be potential borrowers listening. And yet, for everyone who's listening, I'd love for us to kind of get into that like meta discussion of the power of leverage a little bit more because I know it's something you and I both value. Financial leverage is just one example of it. And so maybe we can share some stories, some client examples of people who've got it and the difference that it's made for them. You don't just have to believe us. I'm curious if you maybe have a client story about an investor who got it, who leaned into leverage, who was able to scale, what they're looking like, and maybe one who's staying stuck.
Yeah. So, when we first got started, there was an investor that comes to mind who was new to real estate investing. They had kind of been lurking on different real estate investor forums. And they came to one of meetups that your team hosted in Chattanooga. And I was speaking to them and told them about how we were doing this private money lending. And they had some doubts. They had been burned by debt before. They were actually in a lot of credit card and student loan debt and kind of hesitant, like, well, I'll start real estate investing when I get all this debt paid off. And I was like, there's definitely some benefits to that philosophy. However, if you want to really get the debt paid off quickly, earning more money can do that and accelerate that. And how you can earn money is by getting in and doing good flips. And so I kind of walked him through what it looks like by leveraging our funding, where he was able to just put a little bit down payment, like 5% of the purchase price, and then have all the other costs covered for doing the renovation. And started out with one, had successful, made some money. He started paying down his debt. And then after several of those, he's doing it full time now. He was able to get enough money in just 1 year of working full time doing flips and using us exclusively for his financing. So he knew he had a solid partner. He could just go in, make an offer on a deal, and knew he had the money to back him up and it wouldn't say no at the last minute for some reason. And he was able to get all out of debt, clear that money, and have an income that is higher than anyone in his family has ever had. It's just a huge transformation for their family.
Now, I know we've also had an investor who the goal was to do a bird, ended up becoming a flip. They did one, and yeah, the first one's typically a little rocky, and then they haven't done anything else, and their life hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, it's really sad. People sometimes end up with deals that don't turn out the way they had envisioned. It's still, ended up making money for them, but it wasn't like the perfect, burr where you get all your money back out and they had to sell it. They still netted and were positive, but they kind of got burned by that. And whatever mental blocks they had, they decided, hey, we're just going to stick with that W 2 job. And so they're still working that W 2, making the same salary they were several years ago versus the other investor from the previous story I shared is not working for anybody else. He's working for himself. He controls his destiny and he can scale as much as he wants with the right financial leverage with us and then finding those deals and doing those flips.
And I would even add to your story, as so we see a lot in real estate, that investor number one who leaned in and is doing this full time. Now his wife is also a licensed real estate agent who's now handling their deals as well. So it's become a family affair where they're really able to transform their family's legacy and create wealth that unlike anything that's been around in generations for their family.
Yeah, in addition to that, they have more options now because they've got that stream of income coming in. They have the flexibility to really leverage multiple exit strategies. So he can pick and choose more deals than maybe someone starting out would, where they're like, oh, I have to flip this because I've got all this debt I got to pay off. I have to get that cash. He doesn't have to worry about that as much. So if it's a deal that maybe would be a good rental, he can do the burst strategy and hold on to it. And he's been doing that. So he's building up rentals, he's building up like seller finance deals, plus just flipping others to have that active income. So he's got this whole ecosystem that his wife is also involved in now that is this like business that's very profitable for them. And all started because he leaned into using that financial leverage.
Right, because he could not have done this with his own money. And I think that's a good point too, guys. I have found, and it's not just me, this is another example of it, but we often don't get out of our comfort zone and do things that are going to be new and challenging unless we have to, right? Unless we don't have another choice, really. And in this situation, this gentleman, he didn't have his own funds. He had to use borrowed money. And yet, because he was in that tough spot and he made the decision to do it and to get out of his comfort zone, it's been transformational. I know for me, when I share my story about getting started with virtual assistants, it's that same thing. I was in a situation where we'd moved to a new area. I was restarting my real estate business. I had 3 kids, ages 5 and under. And it was like, if I wanted my business to be what I needed to get out of my comfort zone and bring on a virtual assistant. Like, I would not have made that choice if I hadn't been in a tough position where there was another way to do it. I would have chosen the easier path, but it opened this whole world of virtual assistants has changed our lives. Feeling overwhelmed managing your rental portfolio? What if you could run it like a business and free up your time? My one on one coaching program helps investors like you build systems at scale so you can grow without the chaos. Book a free strategy session today at adriennegreen.com/coaching. You'll find the link in the show notes.
The funny thing is, many of these people that I've spoken to who took the path of staying in the what they perceive to be the low risk, comfortable path of not leveraging and going out there and doing something new, they're actually far more uncomfortable than those that have worked with us and grown and scaled who now are very profitable, making lots of money. These other people are still like struggling there. If they're self-employed, their businesses are struggling, they're in debt, and they keep coming like, yeah, once I get this like debt paid off, I'll start doing the real estate investing. And it's like, well, if you have a good strategy and the right financial partner, it doesn't have to be that way. You can start now and clean up the mess that you made doing the other strategies.
Well, and like for my own, if I hadn't brought on a virtual assistant, I would still be a probably moderately successful solo real estate agent in Chattanooga. And I would need to keep doing that because I wouldn't have created a real estate team that was a saleable business that allowed us to now travel the world internationally full time as a family. So I'd say my story, like that little bit of getting out of a comfort zone, had like a 10x return in life.
Absolutely. And sometimes you don't even see all the impacts that these little choices have. Those are just little choices of like, hey, I'm going to make this small change. I'm going to make that investment in myself to get that virtual assistant, use that financing. And it's like, I mean, in our family, it's like every 3 years, we kind of look back at little decisions we made. We're like, wow, we had no idea that these little decisions would lead to this life we have now of like traveling internationally full time, having a lending business, have the staffing business, all these things that are just incredible lifestyle business opportunities. We're able to live our passion and serve and help others that wouldn't have happened if we had not made that little choice of like, hey, let's rent out our basement. Hey, let's get the virtual assistant before we can really afford it. Hey, let's lend our money even though we've never done it before.
Very, very true. Now, let's transition and let's talk about things from people who may be looking for a passive investing opportunity, right? Because that's one of the things I love about our lending business is that it's really like win, 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 win on all sides. We've talked a lot about how it's been awesome to help borrowers and help them really change their family's legacy. I think part of that is also it's amazing to see changing these houses, right? Seeing the before pictures of these houses that are situations that people should not be living in, that are unsafe, unsanitary, and seeing them transformed into beautiful homes that somebody would be proud to live in and safe and sanitary and all those things that is really how I think everybody should be living in a safe, sanitary situation. And then we also have the win of helping people who are busy W-2 employees or not somebody who necessarily wants to do flipping or burring or all those things hands on themselves, or they're doing that and they want to supplement with a passive strategy and giving them a great opportunity to do so.
So, yeah, we have created an opportunity for other people to become lending partners with InvestAway. So they can come in and just choose from the loans that we have active and are servicing and pick how much money they want to put in each loan and become a lending partner with us and enjoy the benefits of being a lender without all the headaches.
And if somebody's interested in learning more like that, what is their next step?
I would recommend checking out our website, investaway.co. We've got a contact form there. You can fill it out. It'll go straight to me. And then we'll have a quick 30-minute meeting. We can talk about exactly what it looks like, make sure everything aligns with your financial goals, and then get you started. It's super easy. You just pick out that loan. We send you documents to e-sign, and then you wire the funds, and you're earning interest.
And I know that, there are some SEC regulations that come into how much you can share about this on something like a podcast. In the terms that you are able to say, if somebody has money, there's different investments out there. There's syndications, there's joint venture opportunities like this. What would you say differentiates investing with InvestAway versus other things that may be options for people?
Yeah, so the great thing about investing as a lending partner with InvestAway is that you get to choose the loans that you invest in. You can choose 123 Main Street. That's a really quick fix and flip from an experienced borrower. Maybe it's got a lower interest rate because they've done so many and they're experienced. Or you can do like 456 Main Street, who's maybe a newer borrower with a really large renovation budget. So it's got a higher interest rate. You can pick these based on your timeline of when you want your funds locked up or returned. There's all these options that you get to choose and have the bit of controlling yourself. You can also diversify within the loan so you don't have to have everything in one loan. You don't have to have the full amount to fund a whole loan. You can just put a little bit here and a little bit there and enjoy additional diversity that's all secured by first position mortgages on real estate.
I think that did a great job of kind of explaining how things are and how they're a little different. That is fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Harley, for joining me today here on the Freedom Blueprint. And if people would like to learn more, once more, let's share what is the best place for them to learn more as a borrower or an investor.
Absolutely. So our website is investaway.co. Down at the bottom, we've got a contact form. You fill that out, and happy to have a quick call with you and see how we can partner with you.
And that is a wrap on another episode of the Freedom Blueprint. Please make sure to like this and maybe leave a little comment wherever you're listening. It is a huge, huge help to me. And so if it's brought you value, I would appreciate that help in return. And then join me again next week for another episode of the Freedom Blueprint.